Hello, you guys. There are two childhood wounds that can shape a person's entire identity. And if they're not healed, they don't just affect your personality, they affect the brain, the nervous system, and the spirit, you guys. Let's break this down clearly today. Welcome to Trauma Talks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The first wound is conditional love and rejection. A child grows up in a home where love is performance-based. Yes. Affection comes when you achieve. Approval comes when you behave. And connection comes when you impress. The child's nervous system begins wiring around this message. I'm not enough. I'm not wanted. I have to earn love. And from a neuroscience perspective, this is attachment trauma. When love is inconsistent or conditional, the child's brain shifts into survival mode. The amygdala becomes the hyperactive. The nervous system lives in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze mode. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning and emotional regulation, becomes underdeveloped in moments of stress. Instead of learning secure attachment, the brain wires for hypervigilance. And spiritually, rejection, abandonment creates deep shame. The enemy doesn't want to shout. He whispers to you, you are defective. You are on your own. Love is unsafe. Yes, that's attachment trauma. The wound, you guys, is so real. But instead of bringing that pain into the light, into God's presence, many bury this wound in shame. And buried shame does not disappear. It mutates. Okay? So let's get into this, okay? The second wound is superiority. Now, here's the paradox, you guys. Some children aren't rejected. They're over-elevated. All right, they're shielded from their consequences, overpraised, told they're exceptional beyond correction. This sounds positive, but it can be just as damaging as the other one because it creates a different false wiring in the brain. When a child is never corrected, the prefrontal cortex doesn't learn limits. Yes, it doesn't learn limits and boundaries. The nervous system never learns frustration tolerance. Therefore, no development of humility through safe boundaries. Yes, called pride. The message becomes you're superior. The rules don't apply to you. You deserve exception. Spiritually, pride takes deep rooted in this person. Entitlement takes root. And the lie shifts from I am defective to I am better than everyone else. Okay, so now here's the tragedy, you guys. Okay, both wounds can live inside the same person. Yes, deep shame and deep superiority at the same time. I'm not enough. I am above everyone. That contradiction creates instability in their identity. Okay, the birth of the false self comes from that. When rejection isn't healed, when pride isn't surrendered, the nervous system builds a survival structure. Yes, this is the structure. This is what psychology calls the false self. It's not the authentic, God-aligned identity. No, it's a trauma-adapted identity. The brain learns if I control perception, I won't feel shame. If I elevate myself, I won't feel abandoned. The false self becomes their armor, yes, but armor blocks intimacy. It blocks vulnerability, okay? So let's get into stage 2, control and perception management. Now the person moves into what we can call system management. The nervous system is still dysregulated, yes. The amygdala is still guarding against shame. So the strategy becomes control your environment at all costs. Control the narrative, control how people see you, control it all. The internal vows sounds a little bit like this. I will never be controlled again. I will never feel that humiliation again. I deserve special treatment. Yes, at this stage, you guys, people stop being people. Yes, they become nervous system regulators. Yes. Nervous system regulators, objects used to stabilize the fragile self. Charm activates dopamine. Praise regulates insecurity. Manipulation reduces anxiety. Intimidation restores control. This isn't random behavior. No, it's a dysregulated nervous system trying to avoid collapse. And spiritually, this is where deception enters. Because to protect the false self, reality must be distorted. Lies become necessary in this place. Lying becomes the currency of the false self. Without distortion, the mask cracks. Okay? Why does grace sometimes become enabling, you guys, in these people? Here's something very difficult. When someone refuses accountability but is constantly rescued, grace can unintentionally become enabling. Because healing requires truth, and truth feels like threat to a trauma-built identity. God's grace was never meant to protect false identity. That's not what it was meant for. It was meant to heal real wounds. Yes, that's what the grace is for. All right, the way out, you guys. Let's talk about the way out, okay? Healing requires two things: nervous system regulation and spiritual surrender. You cannot cast out what you are still protecting, and you cannot regulate what you refuse to face, okay? From a neuroscience perspective, you guys, the amygdala must calm. The body must process stored shame. The prefrontal cortex must strengthen through accountability. Secure attachment must be formed. From a faith perspective, rejection must be brought before God. Pride must be surrendered. Control must be released, and identity must be rebuilt in truth. God does not affirm the false self. He restores the true one, the one not built on shame, not built on superiority, not built on fear. No, okay? But built on truth. All right? Built on absolute truth, you guys. All right? So let's get into the final thought here, you guys. All right? The rejection was real. The abandonment was absolutely real. The indulgence was real. Overindulgence, I call it. But the identity formed in survival mode is not your destiny. You don't heal by defending your wounds. No, you heal by exposing them to truth, regulation, accountability, and God restoring love. All right. All right, if this message helped you understand narcissistic patterns or even patterns within yourself, stay connected, you guys, because transformation doesn't start at behavior, okay? It starts at the root, and the root can be rewired. That's the transformation, okay? All right, to protect this, all right, move from exposure to transformation. This will be direct, trauma-informed, neuroscience grounded, and faith anchored, you guys, okay? So, let's talk about how to dismantle the false self and rewire your brain. We got to do that, okay? Let's talk about the way out of this, okay? I mean, I hate to give you all the problems without the way out. If the false self was building trauma, it cannot be dismantled with behavioral modifications. No, it must be dismantled at the root, okay? It has to be at the nervous system, deeply level, at the belief level, and at the spiritual level. Yes, all right? Because the false self, you guys, is not just a mindset. No, it's a survival structure, like I told you. This is all a survival structure, okay? So, all right, so let's get into step one. Stop defending the mask. You cannot heal what you keep protecting. The false self survives through defensiveness. That's how it survives, okay? Blame shifting, justifying, image management, spiritual bypassing, lack of vulnerability. Yes, that's how it survives. As long as you are protecting how you look, you're not healing who you are, okay? Neuroscience tells us that when shame is triggered, the amygdala fires like you're in danger, like you're all completely in danger. Your body reacts as if exposure equals death. So you defend. But here's the truth. Shame exposure will not kill you. No, it will free you, okay? Faith requires humility, and humility is neurological safety for the brain. That's what humility is, okay? When you stop defending the mask, the nervous system can begin to calm. So healing is possible, Okay, so let's get into step 2. Regulate before you reflect. Regulate. You cannot access truth in survival mode. When the amygdala is activated, the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning, the self-awareness, the part of your brain goes absolutely offline. That's why people double down instead of self-correcting. Yeah, they double down, okay? So the first practical step is regulation. Slow breathing, grounding, naming what you feel without judgment. Instead of saying, I am under attack, you say, I feel exposed. That's better, okay? Instead of, they're disrespecting me, you say, I feel small right now. This is true, okay? The brain activation, okay? It shifts the brain activation when you do this. You move from survival brain to executive brain. Yes, executive brain. Scripture says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind is a regulated mind, okay? That's what it is, okay? So let's get into step 3. Identify the original lie. The false self is built on lies formed in childhood. Yes, usually one of 2 core lies. One of 2 core lies. I am not enough, or I am superior and should never be corrected. Yes, I am superior and should never be corrected. All right, sometimes both. Ask yourself, okay, what did I decide about myself when I was hurt? What did I decide? Think about that, okay? That decision becomes your vow. I will never be rejected again. Did you say that? I will never be controlled again. I will always be admired. These are all the vows you make. These vows wire the brain for control. But vows made in trauma are not true. They are survival contracts, you guys, and they must be broken, okay? Spiritually, this is repentance, not shame, driven self-hatred, okay? But a turning away from false agreements. You cannot renew your mind if you're still in agreement with a lie. No, you cannot renew your mind in this place. So step number 4, okay, we're getting into that. Practice vulnerability in safe dosages, okay? The false self fears vulnerability because vulnerability exposes the wound. But neuroscience proves something really powerful. Safe vulnerability rewires attachment pathways. So when you admit I was wrong, I felt insecure, I felt rejected, and the world doesn't end, okay? The brain just updates. That's it. It just updates, all right? The amygdala learns exposure is survivable. Yeah, that is how neural pathways change. This is why confession and accountability are spiritually transformative, you guys. They dismantle the pride and calm the nervous system at the same time, you guys, okay? So let's get into step 5, how we get out of this. Accept limits and consequences. Accept them. Overindulgence. Wounds resist correction, okay? All right, rejection wounds resist shame. Healing requires both humility and structure. And the prefrontal cortex strengthens when you accept correction without collapsing. Sit with consequences without blaming. Stay present when uncomfortable. This builds frustration tolerance. And frustration tolerance is maturity. God disciplines those he loves, not to shame them, but to develop them. Correction is not rejection. Okay, it's refinement. Okay, so let's get into number 6 step. Okay, build identity on truth, not performance. The false self is performance-based. Keep that in mind. The true self is identity-based. Performance says, I must prove myself. Truth says, I am already known, loved. Okay, you already know the love. Performance says, I must control how I'm seen. That's performance. You can't control how you're seen. Truth says, God sees me fully. When identity shifts from image to truth, the nervous system stabilizes. Okay, no, throw it out. No more controlling how people see you, because you are no longer trying to outrun shame anymore. You are anchored in the Lord, okay? All right, so let's get into step number 7. Stay in the process. This is not overnight work. You got to keep in there. You got to keep doing it. The false self may have been built over decades. Neural pathways don't disappear instantly. No, they don't. They weaken through repetition of truth over and over again. Regulation, humility, accountability, and safe connection. Over time, the amygdala becomes less reactive. The prefrontal cortex becomes stronger. The need for control decreases. The fear of exposure weakens. And the real you begins to surface, okay? Not the inflated you, not the ashamed you, the restored you, okay? The absolute restored you, okay? So finally, we're going to get to the reality check. You cannot cast out pride while protecting ego. Honey. You cannot heal rejection while avoiding vulnerability. And you cannot rewire the brain while staying in denial. The false self dies when truth, humility, and regulated safety replace fear-based control. And here's the good news, okay? Good news. What was wired in trauma can be rewired in truth. Yes. Neuroplasticity proves this, you guys. All right. Neuroplasticity. Remember that. And redemption promises it. God promises this. If this message challenges you, good. Challenge means something inside you is ready to grow, because dismantling the false self is quite painful, but living behind it is absolutely worse. Okay. We got to get out of it, you guys. So next, you guys, we're going to continue to talk about this topic. So why don't you follow me on this channel? And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye-bye.